Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Palash Soni, co-founder and CEO of Goldcast. Goldcast is a digital and hybrid events platform for B2B marketing teams. Palash, I'm so excited chatting with you, not only to learn about your experience, being from, coming up how you did, thinking about technology in the way you thought of, and we have a little bit of insight into what that is. So we'll share that with the audience, but also Goldcast and how this whole kind of events and space is really changing. And it's like, we see one adaptation, we see another kind of transition into, localizing kind of where we meet, how we meet. And all these companies are finding creative ways to not only kind of create, hybrid events with their teams, but also with their customers, their clients. And it's really exciting to see how, Goldcast is really changing the space in a lot of ways and creating a really intimate experience, which is, kind of lost in a lot of the, whether it's a webinar or whether it's any type of digital event. A lot gets lost in that conversation, but it seems like Goldcast is really tackling those problems. But before we get into Goldcast and what you're working on, what were you doing before you started the company?
Yeah, for sure, Julian. I'm excited to be here. What was I doing before I started the company? Yes, Julian, I was an MBA student at Harvard Business School when I started the company.
And how was that transition? You were I read somewhere that you took a leave of absence to pursue this company. First of all, what was the anxiety behind that decision? I'm sure that there was a lot. And what was so compelling to you that you felt that it was the necessary step to then start your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, for sure, Julian. So leaving HBS itself it was a tough decision, but it was not the toughest decision in that time. The tougher decision was the immigration challenge, because I was, as you can see from my accent, I'm from India, right? It was actually my first time in the US, and my first year was just coming to an end in the US.
Yeah.
So the moment I decided that, okay, I probably will take a break from HBS, which in itself was a big decision because I had moved my family over. I convinced my wife to take a break from work, which she was not very happy about. My parents were a little upset about my decision. I'd done all of that. And then I said, okay, I will now move out of HBS. After all of that, I realized that it's not trivial for me to not be a student and work full time in the US. There was a big immigration challenge. And so that was the bigger thing. And so there was a lot of thought in that went in there, and more than thought, it was more like conviction behind the opportunity.
Yeah.
But the conviction came from, honestly, what you were told when you were starting up, just talking to customers. And at that time, there was a time when COVID had just started, and somehow we were able to get to a lot of people who ended up becoming our customers, advisors, etc. And after talking to a lot of them, we were so convinced and so in love with the community that we were like, okay, this is worth the risk, worth the effort. Let's go with it.
Yeah. And describe, a lot of founders, we haven't really dove into too much of what it means to get, your support system aligned and get everyone kind of around you aligned to the one vision and one mission, and honestly kind of separate, the responsibilities with, wanting to kind of move fast and break things and working almost the risky behavior. It's really kind of, it's a juxtaposition between the two of them. How was that process in getting, your family aligned, but also with your co-founders in the vision, in the idea of the company? And what was the first step? What you had the customer, customer information, all the user information, you kind of had the problem set defined. What was the next step after that?
Yeah, I think Julian, the sort of conundrum in all of this is that all of this has to happen all at once.
Yeah.
So at that time, me and my co-founders, we were all talking to each other, because we all had to make this decision of not pursuing the MBA, which we had thought about for so long, and finally made it and come to. And we all had to convince each other of the opportunity and the opportunity cost that we were taking, and also convince our families of that, right? So it was kind of, it all had to happen together. But I think the main key ingredient of all of that is that sort of irrational desire to be an entrepreneur, right? I think all three of us did. That was the desire for one or the other reason, right? For one or the other
Yeah.
reason, the three of us were like, okay, we have to do it. I just want to do it.
Uh, yeah.
So yeah, that's what probably made us go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. You find that
Yeah.
in a lot of founder stories where it's like there's always that burning itch to, start
Yeah.
something on your own and identify a problem and lead, whether it's a product vision or a service vision or whatever type. You see that commonly a lot of, with a lot of founders, and also that whole opportunity cost. It's like the opportunity to gain a network, learn about, startup and being in that environment versus, not or some kind of monetary. It's not about that. It's about the experience and with the value of the relationships you build. And describe a little bit more about, Goldcast, what the company does, what the product is, what's the user experience, and what would I expect if I'm a B2B marketing team using the product, just to give the audience a little bit more context to what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So Julian, we are a digital events platform for B2B marketing teams. So the premise of the product is very simple, right? As a B2B marketer, right? You will, from the beginning of the year, are given a pipeline goal, right? That you have to drive X million dollar in pipeline, and events is one of the top, 2 or 3 channels that drives pipeline, right? And after COVID, when the world is now in a steady state, digital events have become a thing, right? People know that, in person is come back, but people know now that, digital is a channel that the audience expects, that will be offered in, as the main channel or as one of the channels that, you get access to content, to people, the network. And so we are the product that B2B marketing teams to run digital event marketing channel end to end. What that means is we provide the platform to deliver that experience, which is, a browser-based product, which helps you put together anything like from a 30% webinar all the way up to multi-day, multi-track, complex conference of sorts, right? So that would, that has all the, nice video conferencing elements. You can do, 5,000, 10,000 people, speaker, event with multiple speakers. You can do very nice, video production on it. You can have chat, you can have documents, you can have play videos. You can do all of it with a lot of ease without needing a lot of, a big team to run it. You can have conference networking rooms. You can do a lot of that stuff. And then we provide them the tooling to run the registration before to do all of the things after. The second layer of the product is what we call go-to-market orchestration. So the core job of the event marketing team is to ultimately be the marketer, right? They serve the sales team, they serve the other marketing teams, they serve the revenue org, right? So their job is to get the right people in the event, to get the data from the events on how people engaged, what they engaged with, who were the, the top accounts that came in the event, to integrate with other, sales and marketing tools like HubSpot, Salesforce, etc., and ultimately measure the impact of event. So we are very deep in all of those aspects, which is, one of our core differentiators. So ultimately, we think of ourselves as a MarTech tool first, and then anything else. So that's what Goldcast is. And so all our customers are typically companies, 500 plus people companies who have a repeatable, large, event marketing program. And some of our customers are companies like LG, Adobe, Sixth Sense, Drift, who have, a good brand presence and a big event marketing program.
Yeah. And what's particularly unique, seeing that, video conferencing tools and tools to connect people over video, it's kind of a Red Sea space, but the product is super unique in the way it kind of continued this energetic activity, not only, with the video, but the presentation, the chat. I've toyed around and played with it. It's a little bit more involved than, say, the typical Zoom call where everybody's off screen and you're not really getting all the information you need, or you might be checking in and out. What in particular kind of led you to create that environment? And how did you, think about creating that environment so that, it could really foster that activity that you're looking for in that participation, which is hugely, I think, minimized in a lot of webinars and events like that. What was your process for building, and how do you continue to foster and think about creating those actions and the behaviors in getting people involved?
Yeah, definitely. So the way we phrased the problem, Julian, was to, talk to the customers and,
Yeah.
What they wanted out of, out of a platform like this, right? And there were a few things that the customers wanted from a platform like this, right? So there are a few things were, and some of those will sound very obvious, but I'll tell you why they were not obviously available in the market, right?
Sure.
One of them was that the product should look exactly like my brand, right? I don't want the product to look like Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't want it to look like Google Meets. So that brandability is very important. And that's not very easy to achieve on, on the browser, especially if you want the ease of use, right? If you want
Right.
the customer to go in and be able to do all of that without needing a CSS or HTML knowledge, right? So that's one. The second is they wanted the ability to do what is called classic video production, right? Like be able to manipulate the layout of these things and create those like engaging nice layouts
Mhm.
and do all of that without needing an agency, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the draw of digital events is that they are cost effective, but the cost effectiveness drastically goes down if you need a high video production budget, right? So that was another thing. The third thing is that people need um, high attendance. So we were forced to think about how do we get people into the event, right? And we have a lot of features that we have built in, in the
Yeah. Damn.
pre-event part, which were not only, which classic tools that are focused only in the event, in the video conferencing part, like Zoom, they miss. For example, we have a very complex calendar management feature. So if you register for any Goldcast event, right, you'll
Yeah.
always get a calendar invite. Even if you use Lotus Notes, you'll get a calendar invite. You can click into it, one click, you'll get into it. So that one feature is, like our 10x feature, as Jason Lemkin says. It's
Yeah.
that no one has been able to copy even today. So that's third. And the fourth is the most important. And again, looks simple, but not easy to replicate is all the, the MarTech integrations that we have. So in an event, if you imagine an event, right? An event is like a very highly concentrated, highly involved digital engagement activity. It's like 1,000 people have come to your website and have been there for 1 hour and constantly, engaging with it. So it generates a huge amount of data. And now for you to be able to make sense of the data, get into the right place, right people's hand, and it has to be acted upon within 24 hours. Otherwise it loses its value, right? So to get it into the right place, to the right
Yeah.
people, all of that requires a very solid integration, data analytics, and understanding of a B2B marketer's workflow, which we have built over the last 2 years. So that part is something that we have a huge sort of lead
Yeah.
in, ahead. And a lot of horizontal platforms like, Zoom, etc., don't think about it. Like they don't even have a feature there. So those are some things which, help us stand apart and sort of make us the purpose-built platform, which we say,
Yeah.
for B2B marketers.
Yeah. And I can imagine, if there's features that are set up to, kind of track those attendees and to come up with action items that you lose, you have a huge drop off. Have you seen any numbers for where that drop off has decreased to a certain degree, or you have a certain level of engagement that was different from the incumbent before? What numbers have you seen to really kind of, that are impressive in terms of the way that you've kind of, you've brought all these people into your funnel? If you think about a classic marketing funnel, you've got that and then you have the shared experience, which is so powerful because it creates warm leads. And then what? And then you have this follow-up system that allows you to kind of maintain potential, business conversations and move them through the pipeline. What have you seen in terms of the positive effects that Goldcast has had on that whole kind of ecosystem and I guess process? And what was the incumbent before? How were people tracking it before?
Yeah. So if you look at, let's start with a very tactical answer, right? If you look at the funnel of digital events, right? Assuming that a digital event program existed in the company before, how does it start? It starts with a person being invited. So let's say I've registered as a registrant, right? Then I need to show up for that event. And by using Goldcast, we have seen that we make anywhere between like a 20 to 40% impact on that part, right? By how we, are able to engage people with reminders, calendar invites, and everything like that, right? And then once people come into the event, we are able to create a lot of engagement with We have a lot of things in, how the event looks, feels, engages, what tools are there on your disposal with Q&A, polls, and how we, create the whole experience. We can create anywhere between another, 20 to 50% in how much engagement we can create. Even some customers, we have created a 2-3x improvement in how much engagement we can create.
Yeah.
And then the last part, okay, we have created all this engagement. How do you find that, right? How much pipeline impact can you create there? And we have seen anywhere between like 50 to 200% improvement in how much pipeline you can mine of the engagement you have created of events. Now, this is assuming an event program existed. Now, if you look at a lot of companies, that do not have a digital events program, right? Who are still reliant on trade shows and the whole way of event marketing. Our message to them is that the world has changed, right? If you look at 2017, most of, deals that went above $2,000 were made in person, right? The account executives will fly or drive to those locations. They'll do field sales, right?
Yeah.
And now if you look at it, even $100,000 SaaS deals are being done on Zoom, right? So that same argument can be applied to many places, right? You can do a lot of your event programs can be done digitally, and we also do in-person events. We know they have a place and of their own, but digital events have their own place. So by giving people the whole end-to-end tooling and a place to create an amazing experience, we can create this whole new channel to create pipeline. And that, in fact, is, the denominator there is zero, right?
Yeah.
Because we had nothing before, and now we are teaching people how to do that. So that's a whole different sort of ballgame that we are trying to play.
Yeah. When you think about kind of the whole events ecosystem space and, what is valuable in that space, in particular, what do you see that people, because, we see all this, excitement about, say, the metaverse and having digital events over the metaverse, but it's not there yet into where we feel like a replacement or a substitute for being in person. But there's so much value in these digital events because of the ease of joining them, the information that you're able to get, and the overall connections you can make with people who are different and apart. What do you see as the value of these events as they continue to grow, and as companies, continue to decide whether or not their workforce can be hybrid, in office, or distributed? What is kind of like the objective for a lot of these companies creating these events, and what is the value that people are really getting that you don't see in in-person events or events that are digital over the metaverse? Yeah. So just curious what your take is there.
Absolutely. So I break that into 2 questions, right? So what is the value of digital over in person? I would say that question needs to be rephrased, right? I don't think there is additional value, or it should be considered additional value, right? Digital is complementing in person, right? So
Right.
we never say that digital should replace in person. Like, we as a digital events company also do in-person events ourselves for our marketing. We have products to do in-person events. We are believers in events as a channel for, distributing company narrative and creating community and driving pipeline. So we definitely tell companies to do in-person events. It's complementing digital because there is a time and place for digital. It helps you accentuate the reach. It helps engage people in different times, in different situations, and in different geographies. And not everyone can travel at every time and in place, right? So it definitely is a complement, right? So for instance, and not every event can be done in person, right? So I'll give you an example. This week, you'll see a lot of GitHub's product launches happening on Goldcast, right? So it's one of our customers, right? It's impossible for them to do it in person because there are like 20 product launches and they're happening across, the globe. It's impossible for them to do it in person. Similarly, a lot of partnership events and those kind of things happen on Goldcast, where they can help, bring together a lot of people in different geographies together, versus some events do happen in person. But I think with, the realization that yes, you can create, some connection digitally, the value of in-person events has increased the funnel has tightened that you bring only high value
Yeah.
attendance in person. And so the value of in person is increased. And then, you can broaden the reach
Yeah.
using digital events. So there are different ways to leverage digital, but it's a complement.
Yeah.
In terms of metaverse, I'm not an expert in that topic, I would say, but I believe the tech has to catch up there, especially the VR tech has to catch up. The experience is not there yet, right? For example, like we build browser technology all the time, right? And we know that browser is not strong enough to even do great stuff with regular video, right? You know that Riverside, just to do this regular podcast recording, has an 80% engineering team, right?
Right.
It's complex to do regular audio video even on browser, right? So metaverse has a long way to go, just tech wise.
Yeah. And when should a company start thinking about doing, events or digital events and start educating people? Because I think one of the biggest, value add, or is any company adding value to an audience or the customer base is such, it lead to long-term, return, give you a strong brand image, makes you the thought leader in your space. There's so many positive outcomes, but I think it's hard for companies to decide when they need to start doing that, whether it's when they're building a product, as they're building it, or, now they've raised a Series A or Series B, and they've created a marketing team, and this is a big initiative. But in your opinion, when should a company start, creating events, adding value, starting to think about their brand image and things like that? When do you think is the right time? And where should they start in terms of, the information they should start, broadcasting or, I guess, bringing people together around?
Yeah, great question, Julian. And I wish I had a great answer, but I think I have a framework to think about it, right? So, different companies, market different ways, right? So some companies are start marketing very early, right? They are building a community and they are marketing first and building the product or launching a product later, right? So in those cases, they should start events very early on, right? And for smaller companies, probably digital events, especially if you are talking about a bigger conference style events, a digital one makes more sense, right? Because it's more cost effective. They don't make sense to us as customers because they are not recurring and it doesn't make sense for us to invest in, but for them, it makes sense.
Right.
So, but for a lot of companies and a lot of segments, it probably does not make sense to invest in events early on because events are tough, right? It's a high stress activity. It requires some expertise to do well. And, you should not invest unless you know how to do it well. So, there's that trade-off, right? You have to decide what type of company you are, right? And it's easy to say on LinkedIn that, you should start marketing first and build the product second, but it's harder to do. We know that.
Sure.
Right? But I guess typically Series A and B is when you should start having a repeatable event program for sure.
Yeah.
Series A, at least you should have some kind of like digital event strategy, and Series B is when you should definitely have an event strategy.
Yeah. It makes sense kind of when you've gained the audience, you kind of have your product market fit, and now it's fully focused on one direction, gaining traction, scaling, and kind of, using a lot of founders, I think, I don't know if a lot of founders, but people don't really understand the purpose of, say, a marketing funnel and what it actually needs to generate one. It's not just about the transactions or getting people to sign up right away, but it's about building a lot of that brand image and the building that thought leadership. And I'm just curious, out of your opinion, what brands have you worked with that are particularly doing it well, doing it the right way in terms of the frequency amount of events that they host, the information that they're giving, and then their follow-up strategy with the community that are involved in these events? Anyone come to mind, or a couple companies come to mind?
Yeah, for sure. So one company I think which does really well with digital events, Julian, is Lattice. Lattice does amazingly well, and they have probably dominated the mind space in HR a lot. So that's one. Zora does it amazingly well too. That's another one. Then I guess Drift was amazingly good, at least up till last year, and they're redoing their strategy this year as well. So those three companies, I think we definitely look up to. Most of our customers, at least, the early ones up to last year, were some kind of pioneers, right, in
Yeah.
digital events because they were early with us. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about the traction. How many companies are you working with? What's particularly excited about, the growth you've seen now, and what are you particularly excited about, the next stage of growth and what you're focused on?
Yeah, for sure, Julian. So we have around 300 customers right now who mostly US focused, and the typical profile of companies in our state of our customers are companies with more than 500 employees.
Yeah.
Most of them are tech companies, B2B tech companies, but we now have non-trivial traction in non-tech B2B firms, manufacturing, law firms, accounting firms, um, consulting, financial services, etc. So that's where we are, and the great thing is that um, we found ourselves in a great place with the start of macroeconomic tailwind headwinds. So they were tailwinds for us because we offer the scale, efficiency, and measurability that marketers need at this time, right? So we are still growing at a pretty healthy rate. So we think we can get to 700-800 customers by end of 2024.
That's amazing. And if you think about whether external or internal, what are some of the biggest risks that Goldcast faces today?
Biggest risk? Oh, that's a great question, Julian. So I think one of the risks for us is obviously true with every an internal risk is true for every growth stage company, right? We are a remote company, growing fast, and there's always a risk of train running too fast and, way off course. So that's something I'm aware of, and I'm, always working with our leadership team to work around that. But the second thing is we are in MarTech, right? And MarTech is a very, very fast evolving space, right? The narrative changes very fast. The marketer's preference is changing fast, and how the world wants to be marketed to also changes very fast, right?
Yeah.
So far we have been able to cater to the preferences of the world and the customers, but it is very easy to get blindsided, right? And to not see what's coming. Yeah. And I guess that's a risk that we for sure face, that every MarTech company faces. So we are definitely aware of that.
Yeah. If everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for Goldcast?
Yeah, Julian. So our long-term vision is what we call that we want every B2B company operating like a media company. So our vision is not just events, but we want to help companies, distribute content and build audience like a media. Actually, we want to get into video podcasts and content repurposing and a lot of these domains that help them, build up content like a media company. So for the next 2-3 years, we are going to be focused obviously on digital events and hybrid events, but that's where we want to get to long term. We want to be one, a core part of the CMO's go-to-market stack.
Yeah. And I would like the next question. I call my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions, and then we'll see where we get.
Yeah.
First question is, I would like to open it up with what's particularly hard about your job?
Particularly hard about my job, Julian, is that it changes very frequently. Sometimes it's an HR, sometimes it's a strategy person. It's a very, very highly agile job.
Yeah. And what in particular, is there something now as a founder that you wish you knew earlier on?
Oh, yes. As a founder, something that I wish I knew earlier on was to pay more attention to companies' cultural values and, and to be more serious about them, right? I think very easy to forget them in the daily hustle and bustle, but I think it's those are very important.
Yeah. What's something that you find yourself spending a lot of time on that you want to spend less, and something that you spend little time on that you want to allocate more to?
Yes. I think I spend lesser time on the company's, narrative, which I want to spend definitely more time on, and I'm correcting that. I do spend a lot of time on firefighting, which I think is part of life of every founder, and I definitely wish I can put more structures around, my team that I can understand well.
Yeah. What's particular, if you weren't working on Goldcast, what would you be doing?
It's a great question, Julian. So if I were not working in Goldcast, I would be running a small business. Yeah.
I feel like most founders either have, I don't know what I would be doing, I've never thought about it, or the exact answer is like starting another one, obviously. What's it called? I always like to ask this question because I love how founders extract knowledge from anything that they ingest. Whether it's early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
Oh, yes. The book that has influenced me a lot is this book called The Moral Animal. It's by this journalist come evolutionary psychologist called Robert Wright. And it's about evolutionary psychology, very basic book. Not basic, but pretty interesting book about human nature. And very good.
What was it that you took from it? What particular thing that stood out?
I think what stood out from it is what we take for granted in human nature and we get frustrated about is actually something that has been forged by a lot of forces that, again, we don't see today. And we should not be frustrated by it and we should take everything with more empathy. So it just built a lot of empathy in me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting point. It's like the built-in frustrations that used to be like the stimulus that would cause certain reactions, they're still there. And those mechanisms need to be addressed. And that's interesting. I've never had a founder kind of, I guess say it so simplistically about, being more empathic about not only your internal feelings, but also the external environment and how you're reacting on that. It's really cool. I always like to make sure we don't leave anything on the table. I know we're coming to the close of the show, but is there a question that I didn't ask you that I should have, or anything that you would have wanted to answer that we didn't bring up? Anything we left on the table here?
No, I think so. And we had a very, very good discussion. Thanks for answering all those questions.
Of course, Palash. And last little bit is I always like to make sure we give our founders a chance to give us their plugs. Let us know where we can support you, where we can support Goldcast, what's your websites, your LinkedIns, where can we support you, the company?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, Palash Soni. I think I'm the only Palash Soni probably on LinkedIn. So you can find me and our LinkedIn page, please follow it. We are very active on LinkedIn as a company. We post a lot of pretty good content. So please like it, follow us, and engage with us on it.
Amazing. And plus, last question, I guess, just popped into my head. If you were a founder right now who didn't have the strong marketing and motion there, what's your one piece of advice? What would you start if you were starting out and thinking about marketing initially? Just last question.
Oh, yes. If I were starting my marketing engine now, the first thing I would focus on would be product marketing, defining the what before the how. And that's something we did not do early on. We just we went to demand gen first. I think product marketing is first.
Yeah, I love that. Plus, it's been such a pleasure learning about your experience, what drove you into entrepreneurship, but also what you're doing at Goldcast and how not only you capitalize at the perfect time during COVID, but how you've been able to create such a strong platform for companies to build strong brand presence, add value to their customers, and overall just give the general public more information to know and acknowledge their product as a service. Plus, it's been amazing chatting with you and learning more ways that we can implement that as founders. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Julian. Thanks a lot.
Of course.
Great talking to you.